Participants, good morning. I welcome you all for the session on the Experts Talk. Today we have with us one of the eminent speaker, and we'll be discussing about the techno-legal aspects of the DNA technology bill. So I would like to welcome our volunteer Vaishnavi to give an introduction about the speaker. Vaishnavi, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 47 Expert Talk webinar series organized by Sifori Foundation. Myself, Vaishnavi, volunteering for Sifori Foundation. I'm here to introduce our today's speaker, Miss Swati Sharda ma'am. Actually, ma'am, you don't need any introduction as you have achieved great success in life. But still, as a formality,
Vaishnavi, your voice is muted.
hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, good enough. Go ahead.
Sir, should I start from beginning? Sir,
Yeah, Vaishnavi, go ahead.
good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 47 Expert Talk webinar series organized by C4E Foundation. Myself, Vaishnavi Bhose, volunteering for C4E Foundation. I'm here to introduce our today's speaker, Ms. Swati Sharda ma'am. Actually, ma'am, you don't need any introduction as you have achieved great success in life, but still as a formality. Ms. Swati Sharda ma'am is an assistant professor at School of Law Policy and Governance, Raksha Shakti University. She has done great work in research areas like corporate governance, constitutional law, human rights, public policy, contract law, defense and security laws. Ma'am's today's topic is DNA technology bill evaluating the complications. Moving forward, I would like to talk about the topic in short to make it easier. DNA technology bill is also known as DNA profiling bill, in which it tries to check use of DNA technology to establish the identity of the person. According to government, aim of this bill is to establish the identity of missing person, victims, offender under trials and unknown deceased person. Now I would like to request Ms. Swati Sharda ma'am to start the session. Thank you ma'am, over to you.
Hello, good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, good enough.
Yes. So very good morning to one and all present here. So first of all, I would like to thank Vaishnavi from Clue for Evidence Foundation for such a warm welcome. Thank you, dear. Also, I would like to say that, this, can you hear me audible? This is one new routine, new normal that all of us have got into, especially the professors out here. So we are more into it. So first of all, thank you everyone. Thank you for this opportunity for giving me this chance to present my views on the topic DNA technology, uh, which is one of the most heated topics, not just recently, but this has been something very much in talks and debates, of course, since 2003 maybe. So before putting much time into the introduction, I would like to straight away start with my presentation. Just give me a moment, I'll share my screen. Yeah. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, your screen is now visible.
Yes, thank you so much. All right. So the topic, as you all are already aware about for today's webinar, is DNA Technology Use and Application Regulation Bill 2009. Now, first of all, starting with what is this bill? What does it talks about? So now what does this bill say? In short, this bill is basically a legislation that will allow the law enforcement agencies to collect DNA samples and to create DNA profiles and data banks for criminal investigations. Now, as I was told that most of the audience for today's webinar belongs to the forensic science background students and other audience. So the thing is, I don't think that DNA as a concept for any one of you would be a new concept or something not heard about. So basically, for those who aren't really aware about what DNA is, DNA, that stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It is basically a substance that actually has the potential to reveal your entire identity, your entire lineage, and every minute aspect that is possible. So this particular DNA has the potential to that extent. Now, I'll be focusing more about the legal aspect and deal with it in a little techno-legal aspect. So now the Union Cabinet has approved the DNA technology use and application regulation bill 2018 on the 4th of July. And it was also introduced in the last session of Parliament in Lok Sabha, also talking about the recent developments. The thing is, also talking about the recent developments, the point is, in the last session of the Lok Sabha, this bill has already been passed and now it has been put forward for the Parliamentary Standing Committee for more reviews into the matter. Now the thing is, in this session today, we are going to discuss about why is there so much controversiality in this particular aspect. Before starting with it, what does this bill do? Now, according to an official statement of the government, the primary intended purpose for enactment of the bill is for expanding the application of DNA-based foreign technologies to support and strengthen the justice delivery system of the country. Now, first of all, the thing is, this entire concept of using DNA technology for criminal justice delivery system is not new. This basically started in 1989, wherein the courts first accepted this particular DNA technology and has used DNA technology as an expert evidence. Expert evidence is basically a concept under the Indian Evidence Act that talks about the acceptance of the evidence in the court of law. Now, in the year 1989, in the judgment of Kunhi Raman versus Manoj, this was the first case that talked about paternity case on DNA technology, which has been accepted by the court of law and also upheld by the Kerala court of law. Now, talking about the history of the particular bill. Now, what is this bill? And talking about the history. The history says that in 2003, a meeting of eminent personals was held to enhance the delivery of criminal justice system in India. This was the year wherein we had the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, and therein the Science and Technology Minister had proposed this very concept of data technology thing to a committee wherein there was a meeting. Now, pursuant to this, a committee was established to take deeper insights into it. Pursuant to it, in 2004, there was a DNA Profiling Advisory Committee which was established. And in 2004, this particular DNA Profiling Advisory Committee was subdivided into various aspects to look into the various divisions for the peculiarity of this particular bill. Now, the subdivisions included legal aspects, include quality control and quality assurance of DNA evidence and infrastructure. The third subcategory included ethical and social issues into it. So this was about it in 2000. Later in the year 2007, as you can see on the screen, the bill was made public but was never introduced in the parliament. And it quite has been subject to various public reviews and scrutiny by various ministries and law ministries and other ways of going about it. So basically, And in the year 2004, the government changed because of which the continuous work of the development on the said subject did not stop. And then in the year 2011, the then cabinet expressed concerns over privacy issues, due to which it was again sent to the Law Commission for further references and expressions on the subject matter. Moreover, what happened here was that this bill, right from the beginning, what I'm trying to explain through this particular topic is that this bill, right from the starting, has been looked upon from two perspectives very easily. Now, the two perspectives can be the crossroads here is one that talks about the fact that for a country like India, where the criminal justice system needs efficient mechanisms, efficient technologies in order to enhance our evidence-based system, in order to increase our effectiveness for the criminal justice delivery system. So thereby we needed a law for something like this. On the other hand, this particular legislation or this particular bill, right from the time it has been proposed, has always attracted concerns in terms of human rights violations. Now, what were these human rights violations? These human rights violations particularly and majorly emphasized on the privacy concerns. Now, mind its friends, here when we talk about the privacy concerns, we are trying to go back to the time when right to privacy was not excuse me, when right to privacy was not actually accredited as a right to fundamental right, which has only been awarded to the citizens of this country post the Puttaswamy judgment. Now I'll start with the fact that why this particular DNA technology act has been an important insight or has been a need of the hour for the Indian criminal justice delivery system. I would like to bring your attention to the fact that the total DNA labs in India are currently 15 to 18 labs. For post that, there are 30 to 35 DNA profiling experts merely in India, which accounts for 2 to 3% of the actual need of data DNA profiling experts. On the other hand, we have currently, as of now, we have vast amount of cases which needs an immediate attention to this particular area. Because of all these areas, it becomes efficient and important. Excuse me. Yeah. So this becomes important for the fact that we really needed a law to enhance our evidence and to back up our evidence-based system. Now, the reason for this has also been the fact that for a country like India, there have been accusations and there have been instances where things have went wrong in terms of handling particular evidence or in terms of the fact that due policing efforts have not been taken place. And for that, a law in place would be actually efficient so as to bring proper conformity and proper transparency regulations on these experts as well to again make it more efficient. Now I'll move ahead with the features of the act. Now, what have been the essential features of this act that has been brought into effect? Now, since it is a bill, the essential features of the bill. Now, the essential features talk about the establishment of DNA regulatory boards in India. Now, when we talk about DNA regulatory boards in India, it basically talks about establishing regulatory boards at two levels. First, at the regional level, and secondly, at the national level. It also talks about procedures. Now, this particular act will lay down procedures for the collection of evidences, for the way it is done, so that no tampering with the evidence is done, proper effectiveness to the particular method is done. These are procedures. Now, the Home Ministry in 2019 had also provided for guidelines for the collection of DNA. It also talked about how the transportation of these particular DNA should be taken place, how the storage of this particular DNA evidence that you are collecting should take place. The next feature of this particular act would be accreditation for quality assistance. Next important one here is a regulator. There is the act proposes for the creation of a regulator. Now the regulatory board comprises of 12 member composition. Now this has this composition includes members from the experts of forensic science, members from CBI and other expertise into it, and also to include it has a member from the NHRC to look into the fact that no human rights violation also takes place. So one emphasis here is that this act brings into fact that human right aspects is also looked into. Also, the concern here is, which has been expressed by a lot of researchers here, is that there is a lack of ethics board, that you have given basically a lot of power to the regulatory board, but the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency has somewhere caused concerns and somewhere affected a lot of target audience. It also provides for safeguard mechanisms. Now, safeguard mechanisms, it means that now here the one area wherein particular concerns have been expressed is that this particular bill allows for involuntary collection of DNA, which means that, for example, if I am going to a particular for any particular activity, like if I'm going for a haircut, my hair sample can be collected without my permission, without any other area into it. So, just a moment. Yeah. I hope this is fine. Yeah. So, yeah. So, a lot of, so basically this act talks about involuntary collection of DNA. It does not let someone know, basically, because there are no safeguard mechanisms which are given for the fact that, you know, due protection and everything at the other hand is safeguarded. Also, another thing is whose DNA can, one more feature as you read the bill that states is whose DNA can be procured for keeping them into data banks and everything. Now, for that reason, there is no particular analysis for the fact whose DNA can be collected. Okay, now the thing is, in this, there is one category of suspects. The term suspects is a huge term and it does not really have any a particular conformity that only so and so people can be there. So by including the word suspects into it, it has raised again concerns, especially with no safeguards provided whatsoever. Now, as we've already discussed with the historical development of the bill, I'll try to move ahead and try to tell you that today, more than now, why we needed this bill so importantly, and why it was so important for the need of, as the need of the hour, was the fact that today more than 60 other countries have this particular legislation that talks about for the protection of DNA technology regulation bill act. Now, for that, there are a lot of countries. For example, I have tried to talk about US, I have tried to talk about UK, and I've tried to talk about China. So now, when I'm talking about these, now US has a DNA Identification Act of 1994. Now, this particular act has been there. So basically, the time when we started to think to bring up a legislation for DNA regulatory and regulation technology back, so 10 years prior to that, there were countries who had already enforced such a legislation. There were countries who had already brought in such mechanisms for due enforcement. And we were still in talks. And it's more than 15 years since we basically started with the talks to now where it has become all the more important to look into it. Now, in the US, this was basically developed as a combined DNA index system. Now, DNA samples in the United States could be taken where officers are making arrest for charge of a serious offense. Now, moving to UK, the provision stated that the act that you have in UK is the Criminal Justice and the Public Order Act. And this is the basis for National DNA Database. So, and in the UK, this act classifies that certain offences as recordable, and anyone being processed under these provisions can be compelled to provide DNA. On the other hand, the provisions for China included that the Ministry of Justice and Ministry of Interior can establish DNA banks. Convicts as well as suspects who are sex offenders have to provide for such samples voluntarily. The prosecutor has the power to compel to provide sample if reused. Now, these are the provisions. But if you look into the Indian proposed aspects of the bill, you realize that the category under which the DNA can be collected is quite wide, especially as and when we include civil cases. That which means that, for example, even under civil cases, a DNA of a person can be collected as well as stored. But on the other hand, the fact that we don't really have a category under which, if you collect a DNA for a civil case, under which category would you put this person under? Because the person is certainly not a crime scene witness, and definitely does not fall under other criminal charges. So if you are collecting the DNA for any civil cases, under which category would you like to keep? This is another drawback of the act which needs to be looked into. Now we are at the discussions on crossroads. Now the questions that come is that what are basically the debatable issues? Why are we talking about it? What exactly is it? So the first thing is that this particular bill talks about DNA information is claimed to be secure. Okay. The thing is, when you talk about DNA information is claimed to be secure, on the other hand, there are debates that talks about privacy concerns. There are people who are actually raising serious concerns over it. So here there is a need to look into it, because for the fact that when you talk about DNA, the thing is, when you talk about DNA, it does not just have your biometric information, and on the other hand, it can expose all the other information regarding your parentage, regarding your lineage, and all the other factors as well. Therefore, it is not something that only just has a very limited information. On the other hand, when you're collecting something from the DNA, so you are exposing the person to more other privacy issues. Also, the issue here is this particular bill of 2019, which was again obviously put into 2018, but since the House lapsed, it has been put again in 2019. Now, this is identical with the 271st Law Commission report. Now, this 271st Law Commission report was actually passed a month prior to the Puttaswamy judgment. Now, as I've already told you that the Puttaswamy judgment talked about the privacy issues, and it was only after the Puttaswamy judgment that the right to privacy has been awarded to the citizens of India as a fundamental right. So thereby, as privacy judgment came later, a month later, and the 271st Law Commission report was released a month prior to this, therefore, it obviously held privacy concerns. It did not take into consideration any privacy account and even after the judgment, and even in the 2018 draft bill that was proposed, they absolutely made no amendments in terms of privacy. So the need of the hour here becomes this, that right to privacy, as it has become our fundamental right, it needs to be abided, and there can be absolutely no compromise when it comes to privacy. So the legislation should make the legislators should make an amendment into the said provision, especially. Hello. Yeah. Secondly, the second objection that has been raised is this particular bill fails to take concerns for effective consent. Now, when we talk about effective consent, it is not just it is not at all a legal term here. It is in a very common sense, we talk about effective consent, that the person whose DNA is being obtained or procured, that person should be duly informed. A notice should be given, a written consent should be taken On the other hand, to look into it, the fact is the word consent is also not defined in the particular bill. Now, when we said that the word consent is not defined, it opens wide areas and huge doors for any kind of consent, and consent obtained in under any manner is acceptable as in the current state of affairs, which is again highly objectionable, because consent again plays a huge emphasis in the particular situation. The third area for objections and concerns which have been raised is that no provision has been laid for informing the citizen for collection of DNA. Also, there is no provision for revocation and retrieving the DNA once it has been obtained. Now, the fact is, for example, as we have said, that there are the DNA of under trials, the DNA of suspects, and all of these other people is also to be procured and stored in the DNA labs. But the fact that, for example, if there is an under trial who has been later proved innocent, now in this case, storing of this particular person's DNA can lead to his privacy infringements beyond his individual opinion and personal choice. Then the next point that comes here is that there is a trusted chain of custody. So in this, more emphasis needs to be put into this particular thing. I'll put your attention to the complexity of the bill more here. Now, the complexity of the bill says that even though the bill is made to bring efficiency in the criminal justice system for the faster disposal of cases, however, the fundamental nature of the act is a cause of privacy concern, of course, as I've already told you. On the other hand, the other aspect of it is, unlike the biometric data, a human genome contains a lot of information which can be revealed in the process of DNA analysis, such as ancestors and susceptibility to diseases, as we have already again discussed in the same thing. Now, these are a couple of issues which really need proper concern, which need proper addressing to the issues. Now, I would like to also take you to the other side of it, the other side of the coin, which actually demands for the implementation or enforcement of this particular legislation, and that is, why do we really need this bill? Now, as we have already said, that looking into the number of pending cases into India and looking into the very meager amount of experts and labs, DNA labs that we have in India, this becomes important all the more. Also, according to the NCRB data, 40,000 plus unidentified bodies are found every year, and those definitely calls for identification. So a bill in the same domain would definitely lead to better investigation mechanisms and would lead to a lot of efficiency, bring a lot of efficiency into the criminal justice system. Another data that talks about is there's 1 lakh plus children every year that go missing from their parents. So a DNA technology legislation into the same area can help into it. Now, another important aspect wherein this bill can be used, legislation can be used, is for disaster victims. Now, these disaster victims would actually be able to find a lot of help. Also, in case of India, as I was researching about this topic, and I realized and I figured out this, that most of the offenders that we have in India are repeat offenders of heinous crimes. So now, this particular legislation, if once comes into effect, would actually be very effective in ensuring that these heinous of crime offenders, if we have stored their particular data, in fact, in our DNA labs, it can become effective and it can help again in the particular DNA security methods. Now, as we talk about the need of the bill, and as we've already discussed the concerns and the objections that have been raised into it, I would like to put into fact a couple of opinions that I have. As after working in a national security university, it becomes a personal opinion now that we are at a crossroad currently, as an entire country, wherein the number of pending cases in the country brings us to a fact that we really highly need a legislation to effectively deal with our evidential system. Our forensic laboratories needs to be properly regulated, and reliable policing and trained policing are the current need of the hour. But as we said, that the bill that has been proposed has raised couple of important, in fact, a couple of objections and raised eyebrows, which cannot obviously be looked aside. So now I think that there are a couple of prerequisites to the particular bill that has been raised. So if we look into these prerequisites, it will become better for the legislation to bring the much in need and much called out particular legislation, that is the DNA technology legislation. Now, these prerequisites are that proper crime scene investigation and examination things can be done, trained and reliable policing needs to be done, trusted chain of custody and samples, reliable analysis, and proper use of expert evidence under the Indian Evidence Act, Section 45 in the code. So these are the particular major issues and concerns that we talked about. And then we have, as we've already discussed, that, the concerns that we have currently regarding that it is a violation of human rights. And it has also raised a couple of eyebrows when it comes to international human rights standards. So those also needs to be looked into. Then there is no mention of ethics committee in the regulatory board, as I already mentioned priorly. There is no clarity on the deletion of data, that how does the government plan to go ahead with the data that they have already collected. Are they going to revoke the data? Is there any particular provision for revocation, retrieval, anything? So those are still areas that remain unaffected. Now I am going ahead with my suggestions and way ahead. The first suggestion and way ahead into this particular legislation, according to me, would be that many errors occur before samples get to the laboratory. The requirement for the laboratory accreditation in the bill should include quality assurance for crime scene examination. The next suggestion I would like to put ahead is consideration should be given to an independent forensic science regulator to ensure oversight of both laboratory quality assurance and crime scene examination as well. The next one is need for a data protection law prior to the introduction of this DNA technology regulation bill act, which will provide for a role for data protection officer. Now, once we have this data protection officer, responsibility can be put up on them to make this particular legislation more accountable and more reliable. Transparency can be expected. Adherence to other human right factors can be expected as well. Other privacy concerns include the need to restrict DNA profiling so that it uses only non-coding DNA and prevent the use of parts of DNA which code for personal characteristics, including medical conditions. Now, as I mentioned, that this is how we are planning to go ahead with it, that a DNA is one such substance that can bring out your entire information, starting from your identity, your biometrics, to the diseases that you have, to every other possible aspect from that one DNA. Thereby, adherence to proper collection of the DNA, non-tampering with the particular DNA, and all of these things become all the more important. Another concern that has been raised by a lot of researchers and eminent persons is the financial memorandum of the bill estimates that there will be a one-off cost of nearly 20 crore rupees to set up the database, which seems very unrealistic and very unpractical, considering that the amount that is actually used for the proper maintenance and acceptance in across the world, especially, like for example, if we take into statistics, the UK national database cost 3.7 million pound to run in 2015 and 16. So these are the areas that also has attracted a concern that the amount of 20 crore rupees is very meager and it is very unrealistic. So this also needs to be revised and amended in the particular legislation bill. Now, in short, important privacy safeguards and cost effectiveness are still lacking in the bill that needs further improvement to achieve the desired end result. Now, when I say this, I am trying to put more emphasis on the fact that for a country like India, this is the high time that we need that we need a DNA technology regulation bill in order to increase the efficiency, in order to expedite the criminal justice delivery system, and all of these things should be made at an utmost important and as an utmost important way of dealing with it. But the other concerns which are there, which should also be taken into consideration and looked into account for. The government should not allow the benefits of science and technology to be privileged over the grave risks in allowing the unrestricted access to deeply personal material. Now, these are a couple of areas which also have to be looked into. On the other hand, understanding how important this bill is for the nation, as well as the other fundamental and human rights violations that are currently taking place in the proposed legislation, we need to come at a place where we come at a collaborative way and from both the perspectives. So I would like to state this ultimate objective goal, which I personally believe into, is conviction of a criminal is the ultimate test of the criminal justice. If after years of investigation and trials, the guilty are let off, it is a waste of time and energy. It is not severity, but the certainty of punishment that deters people from committing crimes. We have been increasing the severity of punishment over the years, but it is now time to ensure that criminals actually get punished, also taking into account that due safeguards to other human rights are abided by. So this was all from my end. So yeah, thank you so much for this. I am open to questions now. This was my personal opinion into the said proposed legislation that we have.
First of all, I thank you very much for your insights about this techno-legal aspects of DNA technology bill. I would like to take upon the questions by the participants now. Participants, if you have any questions, please indicate by raising the hand on the screen so that we can start taking up the questions.
So more or less, before concluding, I just feel that, when we talk about any legislation, the fact that every legislation has always been looked upon from two aspects, two perspectives of the coin. One that talks about the need of the hour and why this legislation needs to be enforced, why this legislation needs to be put forward. It always talks about that. And because of some reasons, there's always another aspect to it which calls for concerns. The fact that as law enforcement agencies, as law making agencies, we can all come forward. The legislators especially can come forward and club together and take into consideration the basic human rights that are actually violated and not looked into. Because again, when we are moving towards more aspects of law enforcement, we cannot actually deprive the citizens of the country from the basic human rights violations as well. Otherwise, this is the need of the hour. This is called upon, and this is a highly welcome step if the other human rights violations can be addressed well. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. We have Vanshika. You have a question? Vanshika Naran. No. Right. But one of the question by the participant is that while there is a judgment on ban of psychological, that is the polygraph test results as an evidence, okay, citing the the reasons of constitutional rights of an individual. So how effective this bill is going to be in that sense, because this bill is also in the question of the constitutional validity of the individual rights. So the participant wants you to specifically highlight on this aspect.
Can you repeat the prior part of the question? I couldn't hear it properly.
See, the polygraph results cannot be used as an evidence, and there is a Supreme Court judgment for that. Citing the constitutional rights of an individual, that is right to life, right to privacy. Okay, so the polygraph results cannot be used as an evidence. That is the judgment in the past. How will this DNA bill will actually be effective with the view of the constitutional validity is the question.
Okay, so to answer this question, the first thing is that as I mentioned in the very starting of my session on this, in the year 1989, the Andhra Pradesh High Court, I believe, has already used and has already accredited DNA technology and as an evidence under expert evidence, section 45 of Indian Evidence Act. This particular judgment has also been upheld by the Kerala High Court in that time. So this has been one. On the other hand, the concerns that have been raised currently in regard to privacy, as throughout my judgment, throughout my webinar, I've been trying to tell about this, that there are privacy concerns and we cannot actually look beyond. We cannot look across that. We need to take huge concerns into it. As we can say that even in the 271st Law Commission report that we had seen, that time privacy was not a fundamental right, and thereby we could actually, there was some scope otherwise. But currently, when privacy has become your fundamental right, there can be no scope. There is absolutely no way out that your right to privacy can be compromised with. And for those reasons, amendment in the proposed bill needs to be taken into consideration effectively.
And the next question is that how is the DNA technology can be effectively adopted in legal matters? Okay.
Hello.
How the DNA technology can be effectively used in legal matters?
In terms of legal matters, first of all, the factor here is that DNA technology. The very idea of using this DNA technology has been for crime scene investigation. It has been suggested for use in all these criminal aspects more. In this particular bill, the fact that we can use these particular we can use this DNA technology even for civil cases, that is for finding your parentage, your other lineage and other ways out. So in all these manners, especially DNA technology is to be used. Now, for crime scene investigation, now where, and as I say, that forensics is basically a practical side of law. So now whatever practical approach and everything that we need to find is through forensics. Thereby, law and forensics go hand in hand. And thereby, we need the help of forensics all the time in order to prove any matter in the court of law.
Yeah. Just to add on to this question, so people need to understand that DNA technology is a scientific aspect, and the question is about the legal admissibility. So the question of today's session is that how this technology can be effectively adopted without violating any of the legal provisions as promised by our Indian Constitution to the citizens of India. Because while taking the samples, while collecting the DNA samples, a lot of individual personal information is also going to be collected. How will this information be preserved? Who will be accessing it? How will the DNA mapping can be done? How can the DNA profiling can be done? What about the data privacy? What about the data security? All these things are highlighted in the DNA technology bill. And because the Constitution of India also promises right to privacy, right to life, right to liberty, a lot of rights are promised under the Constitution. So much so, the discussion is about can the DNA technology for the purpose of scientific examination does violate any of those legal provisions or not. So without violating the legal provisions, how effectively this technology can be used is what the purview of the DNA technology bill. This is just for the information about the participant who asked about this question.
Okay, so first of all, the legal admissibility would be under section 45 through an expert evidence. Now, DNA technology as an evidence is to be taken as an expert evidence through which its admissibility as an evidence under section 4 is to be included. So now one is this. Now, secondly, if we talk about is that the ways in which it can be done. Now, the other way is that it is right now the concern is regarding privacy. The major concern in terms of legal aspect is about privacy issues that are taking into place. Now, these privacy issues, the fact that up there, as we have researched. Now, again, I am not a forensics person, but I can tell you a little. I'll tell you into the little legalities about it. Now, the thing is that there is a part of the DNA which can be exposed, and if that is exposed, so now that thing can be used, for revealing your entire information. So that part shouldn't be used. And the other part of the DNA that only reveals your biometrics and other information should be used. One. Second case is that in cases of criminal cases, now as we can see in US, in other countries like UK and some other countries as well, now they use this particular DNA technology only in serious offenses and not in every other cases. Especially, not a lot of countries are using this technology for civil disputes or under civil cases. So this is another legal aspect that can be looked into it. That, for example, the consent that you are taking from someone, that needs to be properly looked into. Due notice should be sent to the person. The person should have the right basically to look into the fact that whether they are willing to give their DNA, shouldn't, especially the suspects and the under trials, they should be looked into it. For repeated offenders, this provision should not be there, of course. And for the suspects or the under trials who are later found innocent, so in order to ensure proper efficiency in terms of legality and proper privacy issues which are raised are properly adhered to, what can be done here is that the DNA of those people should not be stored in the DNA labs and should not be used for any other commercial purpose particularly. Now, special emphasis needs to be looked into all of these areas. Yeah. I hope I've answered the question. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, very much. We have Mr. Ritesh Shukla, sir.
Yes, Swati, very nice presentation. I'm sorry I joined very late, so might be I missed something part. And I have a question. You mentioned right now that DNA bill or DNA fingerprinting should be used only for the criminal cases, not for the civil cases. But as per my information, for the kinship cases already the DNA fingerprinting is used, which is a civil cases, first thing. Second thing is that if we allow the biometrics, okay, if we allow the biometrics, then why not DNA? Both are used for the personal identification. So why the question is raised only for the DNA bill? And if you are talking about the UDHR is established in 1948 after the Second World War. So it is too old also. So why not there's some changes should be or some amendment is required for the UDHR also?
All right. Thank you for the question, sir. I would like to put your, first of all, as you said that, civil cases. Now, when I said for civil cases, the fact that I was trying to mention is that the issue that is raised currently for civil cases, why DNA is raising a lot of concerns from the legal fraternity right now under civil cases is that the categories under which a DNA sample would be stored right now is basically dealing with crime scene investigation or your under trials, and more or less the category talks that you are a criminal, right? Now, when we talk about civil cases, now the civil cases basically has absolutely no provision that will store into it. So my point here was that if the Indian law makes up a provision that talks about collection of DNA for civil disputes, there should be a separate category, so that the person is first of all not classified as a criminal under any of the other already existing provisions or classifications that we have. So first thing, when I talked about civil disputes, the concern was about that we don't have a classification base through which we can put those persons there. Now, secondly, when we talk about, you talked about UDHR and everything. The thing is, for any human rights person, the thing is that UDHR is the Magna Carta of the particular, thing. So the concern here is that human rights have only evolved over the years, and it has not degraded over the years. So right from 1948, when the UDHR was established, until now, we have to only go evolving. The fact is, when we talk about science and technology taking an enhancement and a development, which is obviously needed, as I've already stated, none of us actually cannot, compromise on the human rights aspect as well. Also, when we say that, as you rightly said, that in the civil cases, especially that in kinship areas, like even in the first case that we have for DNA technology, where the courts accepted DNA as an expert evidence in 1989. This was the case in 1989. So we have it. But the issue that we have right now is about the storing of these DNA in the DNA labs. The issue is not with using this particular evidence as an expert evidence. In fact, this has created a lot of better impacts. The issue right now, the human rights violation issues that has been caused is from the fact that you are going to be storing this DNA with the DNA labs, which can also be used by other private agencies. This has been looked into from that perspective. So the issue is basically with the storing of these DNA, even under civil matters, which can have a huge impact on anyone's privacy. Now, for example, I am not okay with the fact that my information, for example, my civil information is being shared. So this has to be an individual's opinion. For those who are okay with it, well and good, but this should always be at the end of the person who's sharing their DNA, and should not be made as a law that you are supposed to share your personal data in terms of that, is what my opinion says.
Just to add on to this explanation, while you mentioned about the other biometrics, so what I personally feel is that the other biometrics is a individual identification of an individual, but DNA is not just individual identification,
Absolutely.
but it is a gene of the whole family background. So for this, probably this would require a special provisions than compared to any other biometrics access.
Yeah, it's fine. But my question is, in case of DNA fingerprinting, apart from the criminal cases, DNA is not stored into the lab. This is a rule, and it is mentioned into the manual. If once the DNA fingerprinting is performed, your data is already stored. After that, no any sample is stored into the laboratories. They already destroy these samples. They are not keep those samples. So I don't think so there's any issue if we are talking about the DNA fingerprinting for the whole country. But yes, definitely it requires some amendments, how the privacy is going on and how we can keep these data. But I don't think so there's any issue if we can give our biometrics. If we are giving our fingerprints, though, what is the issue if we are giving our DNA?
Sir, absolutely not. There shouldn't be one. The issue here is that once such a thing has become a law, that anyone's data can be collected and can be stored till time they feel like, and there is absolutely no notice and no consent that is taken. Now, this is where the eyebrows are raised. And as I've already again and again said, that this particular legislation is the need of the hour. We really need to bring this into enforcement. But the fact that there are couple of human rights violations which are grave and which are intense, we cannot actually compromise those human rights violations as well, is what I'm trying to make my point.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct, Swati. Actually, the problem is that if any science and technology is developed or any laws is coming, then all laws, all science and technology is having two sides of the coin. Okay,
absolutely.
So we can't help in that sense, because whatever you are doing, every time you find that there is a something lacuna is in the law or something lacuna in the technology. So that is the reason why the technology is evolved, why the lots of amendment is occurring to the laws.
Yes, sir.
Sir, indeed, probably the application of DNA being very vast. So, because the DNA is used for disaster victim identification, DNA is used for, identification of the criminal records. See, while we discuss about the identification of the criminal records of an unknown DNA sample with that of the known sources. So, just like other database what we have got right now, while all the citizens' DNA is going to be profiled, and whenever we get an unknown DNA, that's going to be searched with the known DNA samples. This is one application. Okay, second application, this is going to be used for the disaster victim identification or unknown dead bodies identification, something like this. But when it comes to civil disputes, the application is going to be different because we have only one, a questioned sample with one known sample, whether this person belongs to any of this family tree or not. So hence, probably the DNA has got a wide application. There need to be discussions like this. Probably we can actually narrow down the application of DNA technology bill so that we have an effective law to be followed in future. So
Exactly. Thank you, Swati. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the participants on the Facebook, the YouTube live has asked this question. DNA profiling is a time taken process and it's costly and also cannot use in generally for identification instead of biometric.
Okay.
So what is it you have to comment about its time consuming process and the cost effective process? Probably this question is to be done. Probably I would request Ritesh Shukla sir. Ritesh sir.
Yeah. What is the question?
The question is DNA profiling is a time consuming process and it's costly also. So why it should be used is what the question is. Since it's a techno question, I am asking you to answer this question, sir, please.
I think you already gave the answer to these questions because DNA is a vast of the application and all these things. So that is the reason why the DNA is used, and definitely it is a costly technique till now. But many new technologies developed for the DNA fingerprinting, which is reduce the cost of the DNA technology right now. So this is not the big issue. Means whatever done in the 1984 when the DNA fingerprinting is established, and what is right now in 2020, there's a lots of huge difference in the cost of the DNA fingerprinting. So I don't think so. If you get the lots of information from any technology, so why not you are going to pay for that?
It was very, very accurate and on dot actually answer, sir. Anyway, thank you for that, sir. Madam, the question by one of the participants here is that apart from violation of right to privacy, what are the drawbacks of this act?
I think I have already explained in a lot of proper detailed manner the drawbacks of the act. But as I've said, most of the drawbacks of this particular act, there is no drawback of the act. There are only loopholes in the act, basically. Loopholes that actually have attracted a lot of human rights violations. And once those, human rights violations that have been raised concerns with, if we can actually target those and we can sort those properly, I think there is absolutely nothing. This is a particular technology which can rapidly increase and expedite the criminal delivery system in India. So there is no drawback of the act. There are only loopholes, as I would again like to mention, which can definitely be looked into.
The question is about if the twins' DNA is same or different. This is again a question of technology. What I would like to answer is that in the past few years, there was a belief or with the established case laws that twins' DNA were not so very effective to be discriminated. There are cases where one of the twin brother is convicted for the offense committed by another twin brother. So on the basis of DNA sample only. But in the recent days, there are technologies which are available to differentiate the individual DNA irrespective of the person being a twin or a sibling. So this is the update for you on the question. Okay. So with this, I would like to. Okay. See, madam, I would like to update you that there are questions which are coming up related to the DNA technology. Okay, as a technical aspect here. So what I would like to answer all the participants is that this question, this decision is more about the legal aspects of the bill. So any questions related to legal aspects were actually discussed so far. So with this,
I actually had to, like considering that I am not from a forensics background and I'm from a legal fraternity. So for this, I had to actually have a conversation looking into the technical aspects, with Dean Dean FA, Shri KV Ravi Kumar sir. So he actually has given me a lot of inputs when it came to forensics and how to go about things and everything. So yeah, I definitely, it was an enriching session for me as well. Thank you.
I would like to call upon the academicians here. We have quite a few number of academicians from various colleges across India. So any of the academicians want to add, want to clarify anything about this? Dr. Rajni Khanna, Dr. Samir, Dr. Ali Mohammed, Dr. Anil, Dr. Alan James, Dr. Rajesh. You can just unmute your microphone and pose a question or comment about the session which you had today. Okay. Fine. I don't see any questions coming up. So with this, participants, I would like to thank all the participants here for joining us, and personal thanks to Swati Sharda madam, so for your wonderful insight about the DNA technology bill. And yes, this session is more about thinking and start understanding the bill as a whole law, which is going to be implemented in the near future, and what technologically what can be contributed and what need to be done as a framework. All these things can definitely be started to be thinking by the legal fraternity as well as the technical fraternity from now on. So with this, I thank you all for the session. And participants, please be noted, the link to get the certificates would be shared on the YouTube live video of this particular session. So you'll be having a link after this session. After you'll be getting a link on the particular video on the YouTube channel. So this link will be valid for 10 minutes. So you can fill up the link to get your participation certificates. The link which is shared right now has some issue. I'm going to share the link again. So all the participants on the Zoom meeting as well as on the YouTube live have to fill that participation form so you can get the participation certificate. So addition to all those things, the newsletter of Clue for Evidence News with the second edition is set to be released in few hours from now. So if you have not subscribed to our C4E newsletter, please do that. The session theme, the newsletter theme of this month is ballistics. So there are a good number of articles by various experts, various students, and there are good activities like Sudoku and the puzzles, quiz, all these things. So please follow with that newsletter and subscribe to our newsletter also. I'll share the link after this session. So you can just fill up the certification form as well as the subscribe to the newsletter so that you can get engaged with our activities. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.